Okay, and welcome to Congruent Triangles, Part 2. Now for number 1, it says given ML is perpendicular to BL. Remember that this symbol right here means perpendicular. So let's see, so we're saying that ML is perpendicular to BL. Well, of course, here we have a right angle. Okay, and then right here, this says that AL is congruent to MB. AL is congruent to MB. Okay, so let's see. Let me use a different color here. We're going to say that, oh yeah, AL is congruent to MB. Now, one thing that I don't tell y'all verbally, but I do show y'all with a symbol, y'all see this right here? I'm showing you that we have that right angle right there as well. And notice I'm saying that this side is congruent to that side. Okay, in my opinion, this is one of the most tricky sets of congruent triangles. So what would be something that would be very helpful to know? Well, we actually have a shared side. In fact, I want y'all to give that 3 tick marks, which we'll always do for our shared side. Let's label it. And the second trickiest thing about this is that it's really hard to see the triangle. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take this rightmost right triangle and we're going to draw it out over here. This rightmost right triangle. And let's see, we have 2 tick marks here, we have 3 tick marks there, and we have our right angle right here. And let's go ahead and name these things as we see them. The first thing we see is that we see a side. The second thing that we see is a side. Remember, we have to go towards the nearest piece of information. And the third thing that we see is an angle. Wait a second. Some of you are probably seeing a little bit of a bad word here, so we're going to write it a little bit backwards because we don't want to be unprofessional. And so here we have side-side angle. Now I want you to note that side-side angle, or if you're reading it backwards, or a bad word, is actually going to be not a property of congruency. If you ever have side-side angle, that does not indicate that the triangles are congruent. Unless, alright, and I want y'all to remember this phrase, there are no bad words in math. I'll say it one more time. There are no bad words in math. Why? Because this is not just any angle, it is a right angle. And so I want y'all to notice this. When we have a right angle, side-side, we actually call this something kind of special. We call this the hypotenuse leg. Alright? So we would say that these 2 triangles are congruent by hypotenuse leg. Now this was number 1 in the previous round, and I just want you to know that every single answer choice was marked as correct no matter what you chose because I had not introduced this just yet. But now you know, this is called hypotenuse leg. Alright, let's move on to our second example. Okay. So this problem was number 2 from our previous problems. And why did I do this? Well, I wanted you to really look at the problems and think about it and struggle. And then, now I'm presenting it to you, now that you've thought about it, this should make a little bit more sense. So number 2 says this, given AN, AN is congruent to NB, and wait a second, here we only have 1 piece of information per triangle. We only know the side. But you're probably thinking, well, wait a second, Mr. Hastings. We have 2 lines that are crossing here. Okay. And what do we call those? Those are going to be our vertical angles, which we know are congruent. There's only one problem. When I look at this, and I'm looking at my leftmost or my rightmost triangle, it doesn't really matter. We only have 2 pieces of information. Remember, triangles can only be congruent when they have 3 pieces of information. So for this, we would say not enough information. Okay, and I'll short that to info. Alright, let's move on to our next example. Okay, let's take a look here. And before we do anything, can you spot our 1 piece of hidden information? I hope you can. I hope you said, you know what? I see that AB is actually what we have been calling a shared side. And remember, for a shared side, I, Mr. Hastings, personally like to use 3 tick marks. Okay, so what information do we have? Well, we have a side, we have an angle, and we have a side. And remember, as we go around this triangle, we say that these are congruent by side, angle, side. Easy. Okay, let's move on to our next example. Okay, I wanted to pick this one out because, in my opinion, this is one of the more interesting sets. And let's go ahead and start labeling some things. Given triangle ABB prime is isosceles, and AC is a perpendicular bisector. And I believe I also gave you all this in the information above, but AB is congruent to AB prime. Okay, so here we know that these two things are congruent. I'm going to give that to y'all. And I also know that AC is a perpendicular bisector. Okay, so it forms right angles, and it splits those into congruent sides. Now, why is this so important? Well, it turns out there are multiple properties of congruence here. In fact, there's almost too many. So let's kind of go through these. 1, we should see that we have a shared side, and so if we look at 1, 2, 3 sides in a row, we see that these triangles are congruent by side, side, side. Okay. What else can we see here? I'm just going to kind of undo some things. Okay. So not only are they congruent by side, 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 you know what? What do we know about congruent triangles? We know they have congruent base angles. Okay. So we could actually look here and we could say, you know what? We have a side, we have an angle, and we have a side. So these are congruent by side, angle, side, or SAS. Okay, let me kind of delete these markings. We'll clean it up just a little bit. Oh, we're almost there. Okay, so we know it's also congruent by side, angle, side. And let's just go ahead and kind of analyze this one more time. Let's use this nice little green color. And what if we look down here? And we said, you know what? This is an angle, this is a side, and this is an angle. Oh yeah, check it out. We also have angle, side, angle. Well, is there really anything else that we could use? You know, let me use a completely different color so it really stands out. Well, we could say, here's this angle. Hey, here's this angle. And hey, here's this side. We could actually say there's a congruent by angle, angle, side as well. Are there any things here that we're missing? Well, just because it's a little bit cluttered, let me move over to this right triangle. We're going to move to this right triangle over here. And notice we actually have a right angle. I'll label that RA. We have a right angle. And then as we move around, we have a side. And as we move around more, we have another side. Right angle, side, side. Or if you will recall, we call this hypotenuse leg. In fact, guys, if you're ever given this information, an isosceles triangle with a perpendicular bisector, it can literally be proved congruent by every single property of congruence. Alright, I hope that this helps, and this was my unique example because I think it's quite interesting, and I'll see you guys in our next video.